So let's get started then. We are going to start by going through the expense and payments process flow inside Expense Plus, which are these four red boxes you see on screen. And they're going to briefly take you through creating invoices and recording bank deposits before moving on to bank reconciliation, reports, and donations and gift aid. So let's look at enter purchases, which is the first step in this process flow that we're going to go through. Now, this essentially is a digital way to record not just expenses, but also other purchases that your church or charity makes. And this is typically the only screen that most users would have access to. So you can set up multiple users with different access to just the modules and the options that you want them to have. And essentially, the reason that lots of users will have access to this screen typically is so that they can submit their expense claims digitally. And this is a massive advantage for them because rather than kind of printing out a form and printing out the receipts and attaching it and bringing it into the office, etc., they can just do this on phone, tablet, or computer, and they can submit their expenses. But the real advantage is when you come to bookkeeping, because rather than keying in data off of those paper-based forms, the data is already captured electronically to begin with. So let's have a look at how do you enter an expense claim then. So I'm going to click expense claim as the option. This may be the only option that different users have because you don't have to give them all of the options that you just saw on that screen. We're going to pretend that we went to Tesco this morning. So we're going to type supplier as Tesco in here. We are then going to scroll down and we are going to select a fund and a category. So when you first set up Expense Plus, you can set up all the different funds that your charity has. So you're likely to have a kind of general unrestricted fund. You might have other unrestricted, designated or restricted funds, and that's great. And your list will be customized to be the different funds that you have. I'm going to select general here. Most users wouldn't need to select that option because even if you have multiple funds, you're probably only going to give them options to claim against your general fund. And then from the next list, we're selecting the category or nominal code, as you might know it as. Again, you set these up for your church or charity. We give you some example ones, but you get to add all of the different kind of categories and structure that you would like. I'm going to search for the word kids in here. Again, you can just search for any category that you want. And although you may have 50 or 100 expenditure categories, you can again just limit each user to the categories that they need to claim against. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to just going to type the word resources in here. Obviously, you can add something a little bit more exciting in there, and I'm just going to enter an amount in the amount field. If you do need to split a purchase, because actually whilst I was in Tesco, I bought some stuff that needs to be recorded against another fund or category, you can absolutely do that either using this duplicate line button or add line. So you can split a purchase against multiple different places if you would like to. Expense Plus is assuming that I'm going to be the one getting paid back because I'm the one that's entered this, and Expense Plus does work best if each user can just enter their own rather than having to pass information across to someone else to enter. But if I was entering this on behalf of someone else, I can go and select that someone else in this list. In terms of receipts, then there are 3 different ways that you can provide receipts into Expense Plus. I'm on a computer, so I can click this button. I can go ahead and find my receipt and I can just attach it like that. If you do this on a phone or tablet, when you click that button, it will automatically open up your camera so that you can go ahead and take a photo of the receipt or the invoice that you're trying to capture. The third option is to click submit without doing either of those 2 options. And if you do that, Expense Plus will offer you the additional option of emailing the receipt into Expense Plus, which will then again get attached to the purchase. And finally, just to mention, if you don't have a receipt and you click submit, then it will also offer you the option of marking the receipt as lost. And on the next screen we're about to come to, there is a whole lost receipt process built into Expense Plus. Okay, so we have covered, I think, most of the things that I need to mention about this screen. I'm going to click submit. That has submitted my purchase. I can see as a user that it's been successful, and I can actually see the purchase here. And so users can see the purchases that they've submitted. There's no need for them to come and ask you where an expense claim, for example, is up to, because they can just hover over here and they can see, look, the receipt is awaiting, it's been uploaded, but awaiting check. It's not been approved yet, and it's not been paid yet. So people can answer their own questions about where their expenses and purchases are up to. This is a great point to tell you that Expense Plus is highly drillable. So if you're ever looking at something like this and you're thinking, I want to know a bit more, I want to go and edit, or I want to go and view a bit more, then whenever you hover over a line within Expense Plus, if you've got permission, you'll be able to drill in and have a look at that in more detail. So I can click here and I can come back into the purchase and I can see it in more detail in here. Now, because nothing's happened with this, I can edit it. Normal users cannot edit purchases once the receipt has been checked. So that's entering the expense claim. That is, I've used my own money and I'd like your organization to pay me back, please. You've got mileage claim. where you can set up one or more mileage rates. And if you give users permission to claim mileage, they can enter their journey details. They can obviously record loads of different journey details. They select the mileage rate that's applicable. You can have multiple mileage rates in here, and then they can claim mileage. So that's a mileage claim. There's no receipt needed for a mileage claim. Business card purchase. This is if your church or charity has debit or credit cards in the charity's name. If that's the case, then if I spend something on my organization's business card, then I can record it through this screen here. Similar to the other screens that we've seen, I can also attach the receipt or photograph the receipt at the same time and click submit. The difference with this is not going to go through the payment stage, because of course ExpensePlus knows that the payment has already happened with that business card purchase. So finally, to mention, if your cardholders don't enter their purchases up front, then when the purchase appears on the bank reconciliation screen, there is a way to deal with purchases that your business card holders haven't entered up front, although it's typically best to encourage them to do so. In my experience, receipts are far less likely to be lost if your cardholders are kind of expected to enter their purchases in the same way they would for an expense claim, but using this business card purchase option. Invoice to pay. This is where a supplier sends you an invoice that needs to be paid. So it's not just expenditure that goes through this process flow. You can also enter invoices as well. You can enter invoice references, due dates, etc. The invoice reference will become the payment reference automatically at the point of payment, which you'll see in a few screens' time. And then finally, gift of money. This is typically only used by churches. This would be, for example, if I came and spoke at your church and you wanted to give me £50, say, as a bank transfer or as cash, then this would be the option to use gift of money. Or maybe you have collected a special offering for the local food bank, and now you want to go ahead and pay the £300 you've collected to the local food bank. Gift of money would also be the option that you'd use. You can upload a receipt or a document to this if you would like to. This is a great point to say that if you give recurring gifts, so for example, if your church gives a recurring gift to the local food bank, then you don't need to be entering it through the purchases screen. There's a really neat way that this is dealt with at the point of bank reconciliation, where ExpensePlus essentially remembers that recurring outgoing direct debit or standing order. And the same is actually true for all churches and charities in terms of direct debits and standing orders. So maybe a utility bill, etc. Then you don't need to enter these through the purchases screen. All recurring transactions are taken care of at the point of bank reconciliation, and you'll get to see that in today's tour. The final thing to mention is there's a really brilliant search feature, which typically only finance users have access to, which allows you to search for a purchase number, allows you to search by a description or by an invoice reference, or you can search by payee, or you can search by supplier, or you can search by submitter, or you can search by purchase amount. It's a brilliant way to find the purchases that you want, either to download a report or to drill into them and to have a look at them in more detail. Okay. Let's go back to the purchaser screen. I think I've mentioned most things that I would usually cover in this module. If you do have any questions that I haven't covered, do pop them in the Zoom chat and I will cover them at the end of today's session. So let's go back to our dashboard. That's entering of purchases. This typically happens within 2 or 3 days of the purchase happening. It's a digital process flow rather than a kind of a paper-based process flow. So there's no filing and there's no having to key in data. And the great thing is that actually the person making the purchase can do this themselves from wherever they are, rather than having to fill out a form and bring it into the office. Let's look at the next stage in the process flow then, which is manage receipts. So receipts have either been photographed, emailed, or uploaded. And this is typically done as a weekly check where you just make sure the right receipts have been provided for the right purchase. What you don't want to do is get to the end of your financial year, come to close your accounts, get them independently examined, and then realize that half your receipts are lost or blurry or attached to the wrong purchase. Now, that won't typically happen, but this stage is an administrative step each week by most organizations just to make sure the right receipts have been provided. So ExpensePlus keeps track of all the different purchases that currently don't have a receipt or invoice, as in they don't have documentation. So when you come to do this check each week, you'll be clicking check uploaded, and it will show you the first receipt that has been provided. And you're basically just checking that the receipt details are correct. Is this Aldi? Yes. Is it £10 and 84 pence? I'm happy that it is £10 and 84 pence. Does it look like cleaning materials? Does it look like food for the leader's meal? Yeah, fine, great. And I click accept. So it's meant to be a 2 or 3 second check. It doesn't have to be done by you. You can give access to a volunteer, maybe that comes and helps you, or someone in your admin team. They can do this check. It's up to you who does this check, but it's basically checking that the receipt is correct. This is not the same as approval. Budget holder approval is the next step. Budget holders typically wouldn't know what a good and a bad receipt look like, whereas this is someone in your team or someone that you've given authority to check that the receipt is correct. Assuming you're happy, just click accept and then the next one appears. If you ever need to reject a receipt, then there is a reject option where you can select why you're rejecting it. You can even write a comment. You click confirm. We will email the person that submitted the receipt, letting them know what's wrong with it, attaching the copy of the receipt that they provided and letting them know what to do next. It's a really automated process for that as well. I mentioned about lost receipts. What do you do if someone marks a receipt as lost? Well, it will appear in this process flow on this screen. You can go into authorize lost. You can have a look at the purchase details. It will show you the details of the purchase. It will show you who submitted it, and it will show you the number of lost receipts in the last 3 months. And so it'll be up to you and your organization's policy as to what you do with lost receipts. The church that I'm part of says that as long as you lose less than 3 receipts in 3 months, and as long as the value is under £10, we will be okay with that. Your charity may say something very different. So it's up to you to decide based on your own policy whether you accept or reject lost receipts. What do you do if people don't provide you receipts? Well, we've got a few people here that's got outstanding receipts still. Well, there's a brilliant send receipt reminders. We can just click this button and send reminder emails to all the people that still owe us a receipt. And then there's a brilliant report which just shows you all the purchases without receipt, which is really useful at year end for going and checking which receipts either haven't been provided, have been marked as lost, and not required. You can just go through that list before your independent examiner looks at your lost receipts and think, actually, I can still get hold of these 5 receipts, and you can just attach them at that point. So this is receipt checking, typically done weekly, but these stages in this red process flow are like buckets. So if you're a much larger charity, you can absolutely do these steps every day if you want. For most charities, receipt checking is done once a week, typically midweek, and then payments is typically done once a week towards the end of the week. That just gets the balance right, typically between kind of an efficient process flow, but also not making people wait too long to be paid back. Let's look at the approval step in the process flow then, which comes after manage receipts. And so once the receipts have been checked, purchases will move through to this approvals stage. Now, it's worth mentioning there's many different ways that you can customize this module, and I will cover them in a second. First of all, let's look at the approval screen then. We can see that I have got 4 purchases that I need to approve. Why do I need to approve these 4 purchases? The answer is because I'm the budget holder of these different categories that these purchases have been entered against. Now, your budget holders not only get to see what has been purchased, they also get to see in live time what has been spent out of their budget. And this is brilliant because you're actually giving your budget holders the tools they need to do the job. Typically, budget holders would get a report if you weren't using ExpensePlus, which if you're lucky would come out about now for your October expenditure, and they will be able to see what got spent in October. Whereas some of that expenditure is 6 weeks ago, which is very hard for the budget holders to then actually manage their expenditure. Whereas ExpensePlus shows budget holders in live time what they've spent. And if they want a breakdown of this expenditure, there's a little report button here. They can just click this. They can instantly see what different purchases have come from this budget category in this financial year. So really easy for them to manage and really easy for them to keep track of their budget. It's even simpler than that though, because although I could approve these purchases with inside the approval screen here, actually I got an email from ExpensePlus this morning with these 4 purchases on it. If I'd wanted to, I could have clicked approval. There's a unique link in the email which approves automatically without your budget holders even having to sign into ExpensePlus. So you're basically giving your budget holders the tools to do the job, and a very, very simple way to do the job. Rather than kind of a paper-based form which has to get passed around, they simply get a 7 a.m. morning email. If they have anything to approve, they can click approval from the email, or they can sign in and come to this screen and approve from here instead. Now, let me mention some of the ways you can customize this module. Firstly, you can turn this whole module off. So if you're thinking this is great, but actually I'm a really small charity, it's only me that does the finances, there isn't anyone to do this stage, can we get rid of it? Yes, you can. You could turn it off. I wouldn't recommend it, but if you're a smaller charity, that might be what you want to do. Secondly, you can set a minimum threshold. So you can say, this is great, Sam, but actually anything under a £5, we wouldn't trouble our budget holders. Can we make those just go through? And absolutely you can. You can set a minimum threshold if you want to as well. You might be looking at this thinking, this is great, but we wouldn't want to do it for supplier payments. We just want to do this where we're paying someone that isn't a supplier, like an expense claim or a mileage claim. And again, you can turn off supplier payments from requiring approval if you want. The next thing you can do is you can say this is brill, but actually we wouldn't want it if the purchase was allocated to say these 5 or 6 categories. We'd only want it for all the other ones. Again, you could turn it on or off per category as well. Finally, you can also say, actually, if the amount is more than a certain amount, we'd like someone else to approve and have dual approval. And again, you can set up dual approval inside this module if that is how you want. So you can get to customize how this approval module works. There's a few extra things that I should let you know. Firstly, If you submit a purchase against your own budget category, then ExpensePlus will by default automatically assign approval to the backup approver of that category, not to you, unless you change the system setting regarding this, but we typically recommend you don't. And so if I submit against my own budget category, it's going to go to the backup approver to approve instead. Secondly, you can link users as being related. So if my wife was on ExpensePlus and we've linked ourselves as being related, then ExpensePlus will similarly treat us as one. So if she submits a purchase against a category I'm the budget approver of, it will say, look, it's a bit like, again, approving your own. We won't do that. We'll send it to the backup approver instead. And then finally, what do you do if a budget holder goes on holiday for 3 weeks? So for example, let's look here. Bob Jones is, if he logs in, he'll see this purchase for him to approve, but he's actually gone on holiday for 3 weeks. Do we have to just wait? The answer is no, because I've got enough permissions. I'm a kind of essentially a super user. I can approve on behalf of Bob this purchase, so it doesn't just get stuck in the approval process flow. There's a brilliant approvals report up here, which you can click and you can see for any purchase that you like who the approver was, or if it did get skipped approval, you can see why it was skipped. For example, it was under the threshold that you've set for approval, and you can see that there's a really good visibility of that in here. But essentially, approvals, they happen 7 a.m. after the receipt check, and that's because your budget holders get that morning email and they can see not just what has been spent, but not just what's been purchased, but also what's been spent from their budget areas as well. Then the final step of the process flow, which I've already alluded to for most charities, happens weekly towards the end of a week, is action payments. And this is where you set up your payments that need to be made. And so this works essentially by mirroring what happens inside your bank account. So assuming that you have dual authorization, when you come to this screen, you will see two tables on this screen. You'll see a payments to set up and a payments to authorize. If you only have single authorization, as in you only have, if you set up a payment, it immediately leaves the bank account, then within your payment settings, you can set that and you'll only have one table. This will mirror whatever your bank has. The next thing to mention is ExpensePlus will automatically group any payments for the same person for you. So this removes the need for Hannah to sit there adding up all of her different receipts and you to sit there checking that she's added them all up correctly. Actually, they're entered separately and they automatically get combined at this point in time. The next thing to mention is there's a one-click copy functionality. So if I log into my online banking now to set up this payment for Hannah, I can obviously in my online banking click on Hannah. I can one-click copy the payment reference and paste it into my online banking. One-click copy the payment amount, paste it into my online banking, and then mark this as set up. When you mark a payment as set up, it automatically looks like this. It will automatically include all of them unless you deselect. It will assume that you're using your default bank account that you've told ExpensePlus, but you can select another bank account, and it will assume you're using your default payment method, but you can change this. You can set whether the payment's ASAP or future dated. You can also select whether you want an automatic payment notification to go to the person or supplier. And if an email address has been supplied, it will automatically set this to ticked, which means it will do this. And that's brilliant because it will stop there being any payment queries. And it will also mean that you don't have to kind of manually send out payment remittance advices as well. Okay, if we click confirm, this will then move through to the bottom stage in the process. So we would work our way through, when we come to do this, say on a Friday morning, we'd work our way through setting up the 5 or 6 payments that are showing in the payments to set up, doing the same in our bank account, and that will move them through the process and move them to this bottom screen. Once you've done that, you can automatically email your payment authorizers. So if you set 1 or 2 of your people up that you typically ask to authorize, there's no need for you to manually email them and tell them to go onto the bank and authorize. Actually, you can just click this button, email payment authorizers, and that will send an automatic instant notification to them that they need to go onto the bank to authorize. And then within ExpensePlus, they can see the details that you're asking them to authorize. On the bank, all they'll see is a name and an amount, whereas in ExpensePlus, they've got the same visibility that you had when you're setting up payments. Again, this is changing color, so I can drill in. If I want to go and have a look at the invoice, for example, they can go and do that as well. And once they've authorized on the bank, they can then authorize within ExpensePlus. And assuming you have more than one to authorize, they'll be able to click this mark as authorized, and they can mark all of them as authorized, at which points those emails are released to go to the different people that you've paid. They don't go until it's been marked as authorized, so that it's leaving your bank at that point in time. So this is the payments process flow. It mirrors what happens within your online banking. There are a small number of banks that allow file upload for payments, and if you have one of those those bank accounts, you will see an additional download option here where you can actually just download the file in the format that your bank needs to just bulk set up inside your bank. There's only 2 or 3 banks that offer that at the moment. And so, yes, we offer that. If your bank does allow it, then there is an even quicker way to do the payment setup. Okay, so this is the payment stage. Let's go back to the process flow and see where we've got to. So we've covered all 4 of these steps. So to summarize, purchases are entered as they happen typically. Managed receipts happens once a week for most organizations midweek. Approvals happen 7 a.m. the next morning because that's when your budget approvers get their morning emails. And for most organizations, they make payments once a week. Again, these are flexible buckets. If you are away for a week and you don't make any payments, well, you're just going to have some more to make when you come to do it. The brilliant thing about this digital process flow is not just the streamlinedness of the process flow, it's also when we come to talk about bank reconciliation, and all the purchases have already been captured electronically, so you'll see how quick bank matching is. Before we do that, we're going to go to create invoices very briefly. This is a module inside ExpensePlus which will be useful to you if you create invoices. Maybe you hire out your building, or maybe you're a church that invoices for weddings or funerals. This module will help you. It allows you to create digital invoices, but the brilliant thing is this module talks to the bank reconciliation module. So if I'm working for your church or charity and I'm in charge of room bookings, you can give me access just to this module if that's all I need. I can sit here creating the invoices as people book the building. If you're doing bank reconciliation on your bank reconciliation screen, you'll be able to see the invoices that I'm creating. And when the payment comes in, you can allocate it against the invoice I've created, and it will disappear off my invoicing screen so I know it's been paid. So these 2 modules talk to each other, which is partly why I'm mentioning this module now. When you first come to this module, you can set up your invoice profiles. You can set up different templates. In here, you can customize your logo, your colors, your payment terms, your bank details, all of that sort of thing. You can even connect invoice templates to Stripe, which just means that your customers, the people that are getting the invoices, will have the additional option of paying via card payment if that is what you want to do. When you want to create an invoice, it's really straightforward. You can either click create invoice, or you can duplicate any existing invoice using this copy invoice button, and then obviously change the customer or change the details. So super quick and easy to create invoices. You can also create credit notes. You can allocate credit notes to invoices. You can write off invoices as bad debt. If the customer is not going to pay and you've kind of given up any hope of actually getting the money, you can do that as well. We're looking at the outstanding view in here. There's also a by customer view where you can create customer statements, and there's an all view as well where you can just see all the invoices that you've sent out in the last month or in the last year, for example. The final thing I want to mention about this module, and the reason that I've covered it really quickly is it's not going to be applicable to everyone, is that when you're inside any module inside ExpensePlus, you can always click this blue help button. This will open our help guide. It will take you straight to the module overview of the module that you're currently inside. It will talk to you about the module, and then you'll find there's always a 3 or 4 minute video which will go in detail through what the different functionality of the module has, and also it covers lots of commonly asked questions. So do check that out. If you're ever inside a module and you're not sure what to do, just click the blue help guide icon and it will take you to a brilliant help page. You can also search our help guide, which has over 450 articles in there, which answers nearly every commonly asked question that we get asked. And so do check that out if you want just a quick answer to the question that you have. Let's move on then to look at the other module I just wanted to briefly cover, which is called bank deposits. I want to firstly say what this module isn't. This is not how you record all of your income into ExpensePlus. You'll see when we come on to talk about bank reconciliation in a minute, recording income is really quick and easy. This is just for cash and check deposits. And if you go into a bank deposit, you'll see it very clearly says that. So you'd literally be wasting your time if you're going to sit using this module trying to key in all the different income items off your bank statement. That's not what this module is for. As you can see inside recording a bank deposit, you can record details of the bank deposit. At the top, you can attach a file if you would like to attach a file as well. Maybe you've got a printed form that you want to attach with some signatures on it. You can also do that as well. Then you'll find that there are 4 different income sections, and this is what I wanted to cover, whether or not you use cash and check deposits, because ExpensePlus is designed for churches and charities, and it's got gift aid built in. And so it does have different income types, and let me just explain these income types to you. Named donations is for donations that are named. Regardless of whether the donor is gift aidable or not, that is not relevant. Our gift aid module will work out whether gift aid can be claimed based on other factors, which we'll cover when we talk about gift aid. And so any named donation donations should get recorded in this top section. For every income item, you can record it against the fund and category of your choice, and you get to record the details in here. If you happen to have a bank deposit that kind of you have the same 5 donors that give you a check each week, you can copy from previous bank deposit just to save yourself time. But essentially, named donation is for named donations, and these will appear in addition to appearing in your finance reports, as all income will. These will also appear within your donation reports, which we'll cover at the end of today's tour. And gift aid may be eligible depending on whether the donor has valid gift aid declaration. GAD stands for gift aid small donations. If you're not sure what this scheme is, and if you just click this help icon, you can go and see our blog article, which covers more about what GADS is. Again, ExpensePlus automatically handles GADS if you record it in this GADS section in here, which is why there is a separate section for GADS. Invoice payments, if you are bothered to invoice someone to pay you, when they pay you, it's quite important that you allocate it as an invoice payment. Otherwise, the invoice that you've created for them is forevermore going to be outstanding, and you're going to essentially probably have double counted the income. And so invoice payments is for allocating money that comes in where you've sent the customer an invoice to begin with. And then you've got an other income section, which is for all other income. So Bob paying you £5 to use your photocopier, or Stan paying you £10 to come to a particular event. That's going to end up going in this other income section, and you can just record it in here as well. So I've explained bank deposits to you, hopefully. This is how you record cash and check deposits, but I also hopefully have explained the 4 different income types which are used within ExpensePlus as well. So let's move on then to, I'm going to come back to the dashboard for one final time, then we're going to start using the sidebar menu just so you can get used to both. We're now going to look at bank reconciliation, which is this step in the process flow. The first thing to mention is ExpensePlus has open banking. So if you you can basically connect your bank to open banking, which means your transactions can automatically feed into ExpensePlus. I'm not going to cover how that happens. If you want to find out more, do check out our support articles about open banking. But essentially, the reason that you're seeing for our Lloyd's accounts here, it says automatic feed, is because they are automatically connected to the bank account. So transactions just import 3 times a day into ExpensePlus as they happen. The other thing I wanted to mention before I talk to you about how bank reconciliation works is I wanted to mention about payment processor accounts. So chances are you will use a payment processor account like Stripe, Go Cardless, Stewardship, Parish Giving Scheme, PayPal. There's loads of different what we call payment processors. And when the money comes in from those payment processors, you can, when you're bank reconciling, just simply split that one amount, that payout amount that comes in against the different things that it relates to. That is a valid option inside ExpensePlus. And if that's what you want to do, that's probably what you've done inside your previous software, you can absolutely do that. Alternatively, what you can do is you can essentially add the payment processor as a payment processor account. Then when the payout hits your bank account, you can essentially say that is a money moving from one of my payment processor accounts. And then inside your payment processor account, you can just upload your payout report, which automatically brings in the details. So for a Stripe payout, that might have been £356.23. By simply uploading the payout report for Stripe, it will bring in the 26 different income transactions, all the different fees that have been deducted, and it just brings that data in and allows you to reconcile it in a really streamlined way. And so if you want to find out more, the best way to find out more about payment processor accounts, because I'm not going to cover them in the tour, is either to come to the Lunch and Learn session about bank reconciliation, or if you just search in our help guide for the payment processor account that you have. For example, if I come in here and I search for Go Cardless, if I just search in here, how to reconcile income from Go Cardless, it will then talk you through the 2 options that I've just mentioned, and it has screenshots for all of the different kind of steps in the process flow as well. So do just search your help guide for the payment processor you have a question about. We're going to skip back then to talking about normal bank accounts and bank reconciliation. Payment processor accounts are essentially a subset of what I'm about to cover. And so, as I've mentioned, yes, you can connect your bank accounts to open banking. If you have a bank account you don't want to connect to open banking, or potentially it's with one of the small number of banks that don't offer open banking, then instead you will see an upload transactions button, and you can simply upload your bank statements. So you can download them from your online banking in a spreadsheet format. You can just upload them very quickly to ExpensePlus. So there is that option if you don't have open banking. Essentially, we have got open banking, so these transactions have been feeding into ExpensePlus. You can view your different bank transactions inside this screen just by clicking View Statement. This will take us and show us the different transactions for a particular bank account in question. And I'm going to now cover what we do in terms of reconciling those transactions. We've got a whole month worth of transactions to reconcile. This typically wouldn't happen if you're connected to open banking because transactions will just feed in each day, as I've mentioned. And so you may well just reconcile 5 or 6 at a time, or you can choose to let them stack up and reconcile more like I'm about to show you now. The reason I'm showing you it this way is because you'll get a sense of how across a whole month transactions would be reconciled. The other thing to mention is this process flow does work differently in month one because actually Expense Plus doesn't know about your recurring transactions in month one. And also chances are you haven't been entering transactions in the way that I've shown you up until now during the tour. And that is not a problem, but I just wanted to mention, I'll try and talk you through what happens in an average month. And then I'll mention at the end what you do if you're either trying to catch up on your finances or actually you have transactions that kind of don't automatically reconcile. So the first thing with these transactions is that majority of your bank transactions will be recurring transactions and therefore they can be matched. Remember I said you don't need to sit there keying in all of your income transactions. This is why. So we're going to go click Quick Match Income. And we can see that we've got all of these income transactions to match. How does Expense Plus know how to match them? Well, the first time you reconcile your transactions, it learns your transactions. So it's looking at our bank statement description. It's saying, look, I know that bank statement description. Last time I saw it, it was a name donation from this donor. You wanted me to code it to this fund in this category, and this was the donation method. It remembers that based on the description. And the brilliant thing is that if your donor gives weekly rather than monthly, it will still reconcile. If your donor increases their standing order by £20, it will still reconcile. And if your donor gives 2 different donations, one for the roof fund and one for kind of general offering, then again, it will remember both of them for you. So this works brilliantly. Before, if you are with CAF or with Lloyds Bank, you may be thinking this won't work with my bank because in the description they put a unique date timestamp and description. It will, because actually when Expense Plus remembers this description, it remembers it without that unique bit, and so it will work for you if you're with CAF or with Lloyds as well. So we can simply go to the bottom of here and tell Expense Plus to match selected, and that's literally just got rid of 60% of our bank transactions that we're here to reconcile. And in a similar way, outgoing transactions, standing orders, direct debits, again, remember I said you don't need to key them in up front, again, because it's picked them up. It's gone, look, I recognize that bank statement description, that's your Expense Plus subscription, and you wanted me to code it to this fund or this category. And again, it works with things like energy, where the amount might go up or down. It still knows how to reconcile them because the description typically doesn't change. So again, we can just match selected. And so we've now got rid of about 70% of our bank statement transactions. Now, if we have been using Expense Plus as I've been showing you so far, then all the invoices that we've been sending to suppliers are going to be on this right-hand table. The bank deposit that we just had a look at that's been recorded is going to be on this right-hand table. Any business card purchases that have been made are going to be on this right-hand table. And anything that's been through the expenses and payments process flow, again, is going to be on this right-hand table as well. So the left-hand table is our actual bank transactions that we've got left to match. The right-hand table is everything Expense Plus already knows about, which is what I've alluded to several times about it, the digital process flow, meaning that you don't have to key in transactions because look, the transactions were captured electronically rather than written on a paper-based expense form, and therefore they're right here ready for you to match, nothing else to do. So how do you match the transactions here? Well, we click on the transaction that has come into our bank account and it automatically goes and finds the transaction to match against, in this case, an invoice. And we can just go match selected. Here is another bank transaction. Again, it's reconciled, it's gone, that's that bank deposit, and you can just go. If you ever have more than one transaction for the same amount, which typically won't happen because by this point we've got rid of all our recurring transactions, Expense Plus will go yellow, not green, and you can just select the correct transaction that you want to match against. Again, here's an expense payment that's gone out. I can just match it. Here's another expense payment that's gone out. The right-hand table, as I've mentioned, is the stuff that's gone through the payments process flow. So when we marked it as paid out of our bank account, Expense Plus popped it on that right-hand table, waiting for the bank transaction to appear on the left-hand table. So hopefully this makes sense. Okay, so we have gone through and we have matched the transactions there. I've left a few that won't match, and I've done this deliberately because I want to show you what you do for the kind of 1 or 2% of transactions that don't match in an average month. This is also the time to pay attention if you are using Expense Plus for the first month, because you'll essentially have to do what I'm about to do in the first month so Expense Plus can learn about your transactions. So here we've got an incoming transaction from Betty Snow. It looks rather like a donation to me. So either we're in month 1, in which case Expense Plus just doesn't know about any of our recurring transactions, or actually this is a new donor that's just started giving to us, and that's the reason it hasn't quick matched. Either way, we can click on the transaction itself. We can tell Expense Plus this is a name donation. If you've imported your donors, chances are Betty is going to be in this list. So I can just search for the word Snow. Yep, she's there. If she wasn't, I could have just added her. I'm going to select, I want it the general fund, and I want it to go against this category. This will create the income transaction. It will reconcile it against the bank transaction. And better than that, it will remember it for all future months. So this is what you do quite a lot of in month one. You have to manually just add those 3 or 4 fields, and then it remembers for future months. Okay. What if this wasn't a named donation? Well, you may have spotted when I selected the income type, you've got all of the other income types that I've already previously mentioned, including mixed income, which is how you split a payout, for example, where you want to say, look, Stripes paid me this and I want to split it. Remember, I said there was that manual split option, and that is the manual split option. Or you can record a bank deposit through the back door, essentially, if you didn't record it up front. Money coming into your bank account might not be income. It might be a transfer from another bank account. It might be coming from Stripe. And this is the second option if you use your payment processor account and you want to use that automated reconciliation that I talked about with your payment processor account. That's the option there. Or deposit of petty cash. Again, it's not income, it's just money moving from cash form to being in the bank. Money coming in also might be negative expenditure, which is why you've got these 2 options here. So it might be Amazon repaying you, in which case you're going to want to code it as a supplier refund, or it might be someone paying back an expense claim. And then finally, you've got some other options at the bottom of this list. Again, we cover bank reconciliation in more detail during the Lunch and Learn session that is all about bank reconciliation. In terms of an outgoing transaction, just quickly show you this. This doesn't match, which means that it hasn't gone through the process flow. Again, might be because we're just catching up with our finances, or it might be, in this case, because the business card holder hasn't entered their purchase. And either way, we can again just click on this transaction. We can tell ExpensePlus what it is. If it's a missing business card transaction that hasn't been entered, we can come in here, we can look at the description, we can see from here who the card holder is. It automatically, because it's seen a missing business card transaction from Amazon before, it knows it's Amazon. We can enter a description if we know what it is, and we can select the fund and category. Now, when we click confirm on this, what it does is essentially it creates the business card transaction if the cardholder created it themselves. It pops it in their purchases profile. It sends them an email at 7 o'clock tomorrow morning asking them to upload a receipt and to enter the details. So you don't have to wait when you come across business card purchases that the cardholder hasn't entered. You can essentially assign them the card purchases at this point, and then ExpensePlus will automatically follow up the rest for you. You've got all of the different other expenditure types here. These are typically just to allow you to catch up on your finances. And you've also got transfer options, is similar to what we've looked at on the income side. You've got negative income options, and then you've got some other options as well. Finally, let's just mention that you're done when the left-hand table is empty. That means you've reconciled all of the bank transactions that are currently inside ExpensePlus. The right-hand table may not be empty. For example, this invoice hasn't been paid yet, so it's just still sitting in this right-hand table. But you can use the right-hand table to interrogate things that you're not sure about. For example, why did we say we had paid this in February? Why has it never appeared on our bank statement? It allows you to go back and think, well, maybe there was a problem with that one. So hopefully that makes sense. We're going to go back to the dashboard. No, we're not. We're not going to go back to the dashboard at all. We're going to start running down the sidebar menu to look at some of the other key modules that we've not covered so far. So here's the sidebar menu. You get to it just by clicking this button in the top left-hand corner. If you want to, you can pin open the sidebar menu permanently. I'm not going to do that, but you can do that, particularly if you've got a larger monitor. Dashboard, we've been back to several times, other than to mention that there are 2 versions of the dashboard. Actually, if you go and look at the dashboard screen, there is a switch view. We would recommend you stay on the process flow version, which is what I've been showing you this morning, at least for the first month, because it will help you see and understand the process flow inside ExpensePlus. Task management, there is a whole task management module inside ExpensePlus, and it allows you to effectively kind of create all of the finance tasks that you need to do each month. You can basically recreate them in a single click each month, and then you can work your way through. So, for example, you might have receipt checking every week, or you might have follow-up new donors every month, and you can basically create yourself a checklist with links straight to the places in ExpensePlus that you need to go. You can assign tasks to different people. If there are different people that are part of this process flow, it might just be you, but it also might be different people. You can again use the task management module for this. I'm not going to cover it in any detail today, but if you want to go and find out more details, click on task management, click the blue help guide icon inside that module, and it will take you to a video which explains more. We've covered invoicing, we've covered bank deposits. We covered the next 4 options within expenditure during me taking you through it up front, the process flow. And just to mention, you've got a whole load of other expenditure reports which you can get to from within inside here as well. Let's keep working our way down the sidebar menu then. We've just covered bank reconciliation. I'm going to whiz through the next 2 or 3 as we go through. Petty cash. If you use petty cash, there's a brilliant digital petty cash module inside Expense Plus. You can set up 1 or more petty cash accounts inside here, and essentially you can record income and expenditure as you go. So it's a digital petty cash book. And so therefore, what's in this petty cash account or petty cash tin, it should be what's stated here. So for example, if one of you guys looks after my office petty cash, I'd give you access just to this one screen, and then you can record petty cash income when money's put into that tin. You can record expenditure as it's gone out of that tin, and Expense Plus will take care of the rest. Adjustments then is the next module we're going to briefly cover. This is where I should have told you up front that actually when you first set up Expense Plus, you can choose whether Expense Plus works on an accruals basis or on a receipts and payments basis. If you are a charity with an income of under £250,000 and you're not a charitable company, chances are you will create accounts on a receipts and payments basis, which is a simplified form of accounting. Otherwise, you will typically create accounts on what's called an accruals basis. And I'm not going to cover any more about the different bases that I've just mentioned, other than to say that when you first set up Expense Plus, it will ask you which one you want to choose. If you choose accruals, then you will be able to accrue and you'll be able to see this section inside the adjustment screen. If you create accounts on a receipts and payments basis, you will not see this section because it's not relevant to your church or charity. If you work on an accruals basis, then Expense Plus has a feature called auto accruals, which means that when you enter a purchase, Expense Plus will automatically accrue it for you. And when the payment leaves your bank account, it reverses out that accrual for you. You don't need to do that manually. It takes care of itself. And therefore, if you work on an accruals basis, the need to come and do a manual adjustment is typically small or not at all. If you do, however, need to do an adjustment, let me just briefly mention the different adjustments that you can do in terms of creditors and debtors. You can add an accounts receivable. This might be at year end, you're owed some gift aid, and you want to make sure that's included in your end of year accounts. You can come in here and you can add accounts receivable for the amount that you're owed by HMRC. At year end, for example, if you realize that you've prepaid the insurance for the next year, then you can come into this module and you can add a prepayment, for example, for your insurance that you've paid for the next financial year. Accounts payable, as I've mentioned, you typically don't need to do this because Expense Plus auto accrues, but at year end, for example, you might have independent examiners fees which aren't going to get taken for 9 months. You haven't got an invoice to enter, but you want to accrue for the fact that you owe £1,000 in independent examiners fees, then you can come in here and add a manual accrual for that. And finally, deferred income. If, for example, you've taken money deposit for a wedding that's in your next financial year, then you can defer that income using this deferred income. So hopefully that makes sense. You can add manual adjustments, but the need to do this is typically small because of auto accruals if you work on an accruals basis. Category transfers allows you to transfer money between different categories. For example, your food bank fund might be paying your general fund, say £100 a month to cover kind of general administration. So not specific to an invoice, otherwise you would have split that purchase to the different funds and categories as I showed you right at the start of today's session. But this would be where you just want to do kind of a monthly transfer to reflect the fact that they're going to give you £100 to kind of cover general administration. This is where you go to add category transfers like this. And finally, you've got fund transfers. So for example, if your trustees said we want to ring fence or we want to put an extra £5,000 into our reserves, we want to increase our reserves, how would you do that? We do it with a fund transfer. And again, you just come in here, click on fund transfers, and you can transfer money between funds. Let's keep working our way down then. We've got a payroll upload module inside Expense Plus. This provides a really super efficient way to import your payroll data each month. Whether you use a bit of software like BrightPay and do payroll yourself, or whether you outsource to a company like Stewardship to do payroll for you, you can simply upload your payroll spreadsheet and essentially create your payroll transactions within Expense Plus at the click of a button. It remembers where each employee's costs need to go. You can split employee salaries sort of between multiple funds and categories, and again, it will remember that as well. And then you can use the brilliant process flow we've already talked through for processing your payroll transactions within Expense Plus. It essentially also removes the need to do complicated payroll journals because it just remembers the splits and it automatically accrues for payroll payments if you work on an accruals basis as well. I'm not going to cover this in more detail, but there is a lunch and learn session for this particular module, and you can click the blue help guide icon and watch the video as well if you want to find out more. Let's keep working our way down then. So if you work on an accrual basis and you're lucky enough to have any investment accounts, then they would appear in this module, and you can go ahead and record any investment gains and losses, and this would obviously update within your financial reports. That's all I'm going to mention for that module. Loans, again, if you work on an accruals basis, then when you're recording loan repayments at the point of bank reconciliation, you can split those loan repayments between capital and expenditure. Any capital repayments would obviously show you in a reduction in the amount of capital loan owed. Any interest would get recorded as expenditure and just appear within your expenditure reports. This is essentially a report that allows you to see the different kind of capital repayments that have happened against any loans that you have. And of course, your balance sheet would also reflect this as well. If you create accounts on a receipts and payments basis, as I'm going through these options, lots of things like loans just work very differently on a receipts and payments basis, which is why I'm not covering them. And it's also why those modules don't appear for you, because actually the way you need to account for loans is not the same as I'm currently covering. Fixed assets, again, this is for accruals. If you create accounts on an accruals basis, then you can capitalize fixed assets really easily, and you can also depreciate them as well. ExpensePlus has an inbuilt fixed asset register, which you're seeing here. How do you capitalize a purchase? Well, actually, when you're entering a purchase, so maybe I'm entering an invoice purchase, I select the fund in here, as you've seen me do at the start of today's session. At the bottom of our categories list or nominal codes list, you will see that there are, if I scroll down a little bit more, you'll see that there are categories called fixed asset categories. If you code a purchase against a fixed asset category, it will not appear as expenditure. Instead, it will appear as a fixed asset within our fixed asset register and get added to your fixed asset balance on your balance sheet. And so this works really, really nicely. And so here are all of our different fixed assets. We can select a depreciation plan, and then at year end, we can just whiz down and just add depreciation in this financial year for all of our different assets. And so it's essentially got a brilliant inbuilt fixed asset register, which makes year end accounts really straightforward. Finally, let's look at financial reports. This is the final one we're going to cover in this session, and then I'm going to move on to talking about donations and gift aid and donation reports. I'm not going to cover all of the reports inside this module, but I'm going to show you how 2 or 3 of the key reports work. If you've got any questions, then you can ask at the end of today's session. The reports that you see will depend on whether you create accounts on a receipts and payments basis or an accruals basis. What you're seeing here is for accruals. Receipts and payments will work slightly differently, and you will see some different report options that are relevant for your accounting basis. But let's look at, first of all, the income and expenditure reports. So we've got a summary by fund report. Again, for each of these reports, you can assign user access like you can with all of the modules. So you can decide, for example, whether your trustees see these reports or don't see these reports. You can do the same for all of your different user types. You can decide which access they have. And reports like this, you can actually customize even further. And actually, you can customize this report right down to which categories users can see and also which categories users can drill into. So essentially, with this particular report, you can actually give every single user their own bespoke version of your income and expenditure reports. Okay, let's have a look at this report then. First of all, why is this report grouped into sections? Well, this is based on how we set up our categories. So as part of the 5 simple setup steps, you get to set up your category structure. How do you do that? Well, you do it based on how you want this report to look. So if you want to have 10 different donation categories, feel free to add 10 different donation categories when you're setting up your categories or nominal codes, as you might know them. The blue lines are what we call category groups. These are quite helpful for being able to group the different sections. You can either order the category groups by alphabet, which is what they are by default, or you can also manually order them. So if you've tried setting these up and you're thinking, I don't want my donations category that happens to be with a Z at the bottom, just go to the system settings and you can change that as well. You can scrunch this report up to be a high-level report, so it just reports at category group level by clicking that button there, and you can see it now as scrunched up, and it's just a very high-level report. You might be looking at this report thinking, this is great, Sam, but we report on a quarterly basis, not on a monthly basis. Well, you may have spotted that there's different views at the top of this screen where you can change how you view this report as well. We're currently looking at the general fund. You can look at other funds and you can look at multiple funds as well inside this report. One really important thing is setting the view to date. This will default to today, but if you're trying to create a report for the end of last month, then you need to be coming in here and selecting the end of last month. ExpensePlus will highlight to you if you have missing transactions. What it means by that is it's spotted, for example, that you haven't finished reconciling your transactions. It's trying to be helpful before you tell everyone this is your income and expenditure. Actually, you might want to go ahead and reconcile those transactions that do appear within this reporting period. The next thing is this report is highly drillable. So if I'm sitting in a meeting and someone says to me, hey, Sam, why do we spend £33.65 on travel in May? I can come and click on this. It will drill in. It will show me the details of any transactions. I can further drill into the transactions and also drill into the receipts. So Expense Plus is highly drillable, and you can find information that you need. All of the financial reports are also downloadable, so you can just come to the bottom and download the PDF or download the CSV, and that's the case with all of the different reports inside Expense Plus as well. The next thing to mention is you can customize. So actually, if you are one of my trustees, then actually I'll probably want to allow you to see everything you can currently see on this report. But that doesn't necessarily mean I want all my trustees to be able to drill into these sensitive donation categories. As mentioned, you could turn off the ability to drill per user. So you can actually, for my trustees, I can let them see everything, but stop them drilling into, say, these 4 donation categories that I don't want to be able to drill into. The next thing to mention is you can also actually determine which categories even appear in this report. So if one of you guys is my kids worker or kids and youth worker, I probably only want you to be able to see relevant categories like this youth weekend away and maybe 2 or 3 of the expenditure categories. Again, per user, you can basically scrunch this report up to just be the categories that each user needs, which is brilliant because you can provide every single person in your team with a customized report automatically that just shows them what they need to see. And they don't need to keep coming to you and say, can I have a breakdown report of this? Can you show me how much I spent in this? Because actually you can just give them permission. You can set them up to see what they need to see, to not see what you don't want them to see up front, and you can do this per user. The final thing I want to mention is ExpensePlus does budgeting as well. So when you set up your budget categories, you can set up a budget amount. So you can choose how you profile that budget amount, either linear, which works really nicely for things like refreshments, where you take the overall budget and sort of divide it by 12. You can also custom set it, which works brilliant for events where the income and expenditure is not going to come in a linear fashion. And so you can set up a budget and also a projection. You can also set up how you want that budget to be profiled. And so in here, we can see that to the date that we're viewing to, we can see the actual income or expenditure, which is what is here. We can see the anticipated based on the budget that we've set, and we can see a variance to date. We can also see the total budget that's been set for this particular category. We can see the amount that's been either received or spent, and Expense Plus will also forward project for you. For every budget category, you can choose how Expense Plus is going to forward project, and you'll find more details about that in our help guide, and also if you watch the video related to this module as well. I think I've covered this one quite a lot, but hopefully you see lots of the different features that might be helpful to you, and these features that I've mentioned, many of which are also true of other reports within Expense Plus as well. So let's go back. I need to go back a few times because I've been forward a few times. So that's by fund, and that's a very useful way to report because, of course, as a charity, reporting by fund is very important. But what if you have lots of different grants and the report that you want is all to do with over the whole charity, what have we had in gift aid or what we've had in grants or what we spent on employment costs? By fund is useful, but how do you get a report for the whole charity? That is a brilliant feature that we've created called category connectors. In addition to reporting by funds, you can set up what's called a category connector structure. And basically you can pin each of your different categories across each of your different funds to a place on this report. This means that within this report, I can look, for example, and say, I can come down here and maybe find employment costs if I can find it very quickly. Then I can come in here and I can say, actually, what have I spent on employment costs across the whole charity? I don't care for this report who's paid for it, which grant has paid for it. I just want to know for the whole charity. And it allows me to do that because all of the different categories relating to employment costs I've pinned to this one category connector called employment costs here, and that's how it shows. This report also has a brilliant pivot on it, so I can actually view this by fund. This actually, again, when I scroll down here now, I can actually see all of the different funds, and when I look at employment costs, I can now see how those employment costs split across funds. So this is a really useful report, and category connectors, do check it out on our help guide, is a brilliant way to view across the whole of your charity when actually reporting by fund maybe is less important because you're wanting to produce a report across the whole of your charity. By project is almost the opposite of that. So this answers the question of we're organizing a weekend away or an event. How do I report on that? I've got some categories inside my general fund, but that doesn't seem to be working because I want to be able to produce a report just with those categories, not the whole of my general fund. I want a running project balance. Should I make that into a fund? And in other software, the answer to that is, of course, yes, but that's unhelpful because you don't want to be left with lots of different funds for every single event that you run. By project essentially allows you to leave the categories where they are and to create a project called Weekend Away and to simply pin the categories to this project, which means that when I say show me the weekend away, rather than showing me the whole of my general fund and all the categories, it just shows me the 2 or 3 categories that relate to my weekend away. You can also have a notional kind of running balance as well. So essentially, we can report on our event without the need to set up a whole fund. And hopefully that is a bit of an explanation as to what that is. There's drill downs for all of these reports, which actually you can see lots of them here. There are also some other transaction reports, notably the transactions by amount report, which is pretty useful at year end when you want to go and have a look at your largest kind of income transactions or your largest expenditure transactions, and you want to check whether documentation has been provided as well. Let's just go back to this menu. If you create accounts on an accruals basis, you'll obviously want a balance sheet, and this is the balance sheet at the date. You can also use this report and you look at your balance sheet for each month, which can be particularly helpful if you're trying to work out what's happening, say, with your cash balance across the year, either for all funds as we're looking at now, or you could look at this for a specific fund. This report, again, is drillable. So you've got an on-date version of this, you've got the monthly version, and you've also got a year-end version for your year-end accounts in here just by clicking this link as well. Again, the drill downs for that, you can just drill down within the report, or you can get directly to the drill downs here as well. Fund movement summary, this is a really useful report for looking at what's happening with your different fund balances. There's a new view sort order to this, which you can click by fund type, which again will just kind of break it into sections, and you can look at each of your different funds and you can see what the opening balances were, the income, the expenditure, the transfers, and then if you have investment gains or losses and asset revaluation, you can see what's happening with those and how your closing balance is made up. And so this is a really useful report, which again is drillable, and again you can get to the drill downs either from within the report or you can get to them from on this screen as well. And there's a whole load of reports which we call year-end reports, which actually, if you want to use them every day, please feel free. These include things like the trial balance and the SOFA report, etc. Do feel free to use them. For lots of organizations, they don't use them except at year end. If you are a C of E church or an ELIM church, we've also built specific reports for you, which will enable you to create your parish return at the click of a button. And it will also allow, if you're an ELIM church, to create the monthly return that you need to for ELIM as well. So these are the different financial reports. As I mentioned, the reports are slightly different if you work on a receipts and payments basis. But if you take a look at this, if you've got any questions, then do message our support team. So finally, in the last 5 minutes, I'm just going to take you through donations and gift aid. Do stick with me if you're able to, as we whiz through these modules and look at the different features that ExpensePlus offers. Within the Manage Donors screen, this is where you can manage all of your different donors. You can also manage contacts in here as well. If you want to use ExpensePlus as your CRM, you absolutely can do. So it's up to you what you do with this module. The donor details view is where you record donor details, and you don't have to use this view if you don't want to, other than to have each donor have a name and a reference. So if you want to, you can also add addresses, emails, phone numbers, comments, etc. And this would typically be if you're going to use ExpensePlus as your CRM. You can also use a really helpful feature called donor tags. You can set up donor tags inside here, and you can apply donor tags. This is useful when you want to filter your donor reports in a kind of more, you want to segregate them into different by tag essentially. And so by tagging your donors, it will just allow you to do a bit more with your donation reports if you would like to do that. So this is the donor details view. The really important view on here, if you're going to do gift aid inside ExpensePlus, is the gift aid declarations tab. So if this donor here brings me a gift aid declaration today, what I need to do is I need to come to this tab. I need to click add declaration. I need to record the details of the declaration, including crucially the start date, which typically will be 4 years before the date that they complete the form. And I can even attach a kind of the digital copy of the form as well if I want to keep everything in one place. This is important because the gift aid module obviously cares about whether a donor has a valid gift aid declaration, and if they do, which start date they have as well. Let's keep going through. You've got the communications tab view where you can record details of the communications you've had with the donor. Again, you don't have to use this if you don't want to, but if you do, you can follow it. You can mark whether you followed up with them when they were a new donor. You can mark whether they've given you permission to contact them. You can record a detailed kind of history of your communication with them, and you can also set next follow-up actions as well. So again, it's up to you whether you want to use that tab or not use that tab for your organization. Engagement, if you want to use this, you can set different engagement steps, which might be kind of a bit of a process flow that you want your different donors to go through, or it might be specific events that you're inviting them to, and you can use this tab to record how they've engaged. And then within our donation reports, you can actually again compare this against what they've given, etc. as well. And then finally, pledges. If you do kind of do any pledge events, and so actually so you're going to run a special offering, for example, I'm going to come back a couple of stages into back into the main view. So if we come to pledges, so if we're running a special offering offering here. So we've got a special offering event. You can go through and you can record what all of your different donors have pledged. And then there's a brilliant report which allows you to compare what they've pledged versus what they've given. So this is the managed donor section. You can use it as much or as little as you want. If you're going to use gift aid, you do need to use the gift aid declarations tab within here. Let's come down the sidebar menu. Love Giving is a brilliant online giving platform that's built into ExpensePlus. We built it. It handles gift aid automatically. If you don't already have a good way to deal with kind of website donations or run campaigns, or you're actually looking to integrate and make kind of claiming gift aid and the process flow much, much simpler, then do take a look at this module. You don't have to use it, but it can be pretty helpful, and the fees are really reasonable with it as well. So that is Love Giving, which is an online giving platform, which is quick and easy to set up. If you want to find out more, check out the module overview video for that section. Gift aid then, so this so ExpensePlus automatically integrates with HMRC, which means when you first come to this module, you need to come to settings and you'll need to enter your government gateway details. And these, by the way, need to 100% match what HMRC holds for you. Otherwise, your gift aid claim will, funnily enough, be rejected. And so you'll need to do this the first time you log in. These are your details that HMRC holds for you. And then in terms of claiming gift aid, this is really quick and easy because gift aid is built into ExpensePlus. ExpensePlus knows which income transactions are donations. It's not going to include things that are other income or invoice income, and so it's only going to include named donations. Secondly, it knows whether the donor has a valid gift aid form. It's not going to include stuff where the donor doesn't have a valid gift aid form. Thirdly, it knows whether gift aid's been claimed on the donation before. Again, it's not going to include anything where it's a duplicate. Fourthly, it looks at the donation method. So you may have had a donation through stewardship or through Church Suite. Again, it's going to know that gift aid's been claimed on those, and again, it's going to exclude them. And finally, it also knows which donations have been excluded, where you've manually excluded them, and again, it's not going to include them in your gift aid claim. So it essentially does the job for you. If we want to claim a gift aid claim, create a gift aid claim for our 2023 financial year for our general fund, we simply click this button, we give it a name, for example, mop-up claim for 2023. It's going to show us all the donations that are eligible to include. And if we need to add a manual adjustment from a previous claim, we can. Otherwise, we literally click create gift aid claim, we click send to HMRC, and 5 to 10 days later, the money will hit our bank account. So gift aid is automatically handled within ExpensePlus. And if you want to find out more about this, then do come on our lunch and learn session. Last few modules then, Church Suite Export. This is just if your church uses Church Suite and you want an efficient way to essentially transfer or import donation data into Church Suite, then check out this module. I'm not going to cover it in today's session, but if you do go to that module, you can click on the video. The final thing I'm going to cover before we stop for questions is the donation reports. So as well as brilliant finance reports inside ExpensePlus, there's also brilliant donation reports as well. They're really high-level reports like the monthly comparison. You again can set your different kind of income bands here. So there's 4 different income bands. If you want to customize that, just click the customize option at the top of the screen. And this allows you to track kind of the different donors that you have in the different income bands, your total number of donors that you have, the amount of donations that you've got in each of your different months. And this report is highly drillable. So if you want to have a drill in, you can see this report's particularly useful for people like trustees that just want a kind of overview of what's going on with donations across kind of the different months for your charity. The report that I really love is the comparison by donor reports, because this allows you to see for each of your different donors what they've given each month, what they've given year to date. And if donations suddenly goes up or down in a particular month, you can just compare months. And so I really like this report. And again, it's really drillable, so you can drill in and see the different donation transactions if you'd like to. You've got donations by date, which allows you to view all donations, funnily enough, between dates. You've got donations by donor, which is brill, because this allows you for a particular donor to see in a particular date range what they've given and how the donations were allocated to which fund and category as well within ExpensePlus. Gone back too many times. Donations by amount is a really useful report at year end, because as you go to file your accounts with Charities Commission, they'll start asking you questions like what's the largest one-off donation you've had, what's the largest donation you've had from a related party, etc. This is where you can see this inside here, because you can view donations by amount. And if you set up donor tags, you can then filter, for example, just for people that are related parties, and you can use the functionality to do that for you. GADS report just shows you all of your different GADS donations. ExpensePlus does take care of your GADS limits, and also it does allow you to use the community building GADS scheme if that is relevant for your charity as well. You also have donor reports, so donor engagement summaries. So if you're using the different donor engagement steps, you can use this report to see how donors have engaged and also see how much donors have given between the dates that you have set. You've got a pledge summary. This is really helpful for any pledge events that you have to see how much people have pledged, how much they've given, and how much is outstanding. You can click this button just to see outstanding pledges only, and this just filters down to the people that you probably need to follow up with that have pledged but not given their full pledge yet. And then you have got generate donor statements. So if you do send out donor statements, either via email or printed statements, then this will allow you to efficiently create those statements at the end of the tax year, assuming that's when you send statements. You can use this feature. You've also got a donor mail merge feature. For example, if you want to send customized emails within MailChimp, or again, you want to create labels or envelope labels, or you want to create a customized personalized letter, then you can use this donor mail merge feature in order to bring down your data and export it in a format that you can then create customizable emails and letters with. And then finally, new donors to follow up. You've got the donor follow-up report. So if you're going to set donor actions to kind of follow up with donors, which we saw inside the Manage Donors screen, then this report will be a place that you'll come to each month just to see which actions you still need to go through to follow up with donors. New donors to contact is a really useful report because this is going to show you who all of your new donors are. If I was you, I would probably come to this each month, and I'd probably be wanting to follow up with each of these donors. Now, how you follow up with them is going to be different. The church that I'm part of would send a card and also a gift aid declaration. You might do something very different, but this is a great way to let donors know that you've received their donations, and if they haven't given you a gift aid declaration, to also follow up about that as well. And then finally, donors without gift aid declarations, we're trying to help you be super efficient with gift aid. So this is showing you all of your different donors that haven't got an active gift aid declaration. It's showing you how much in donations you've had from this donor in the last 4 years. It's showing you how much gift aid you would get if they completed a gift aid form and ticked the box which said backdate for the last 4 years, and then it allows you to add comments as well. So what you'd want to do is work through from the top downwards these different donors, contacting them. If they come back and say, I'm really sorry, I can't gift aid, come ask me again in a year, you can click this dismiss. You can set a next review date, and they'll disappear from this list until the next review date appears, at which point you can follow up with them again. Hopefully this has been really helpful as a tour. I know it's been very, very quick. We've gone through lots of different modules. I've given you lots of information. So do check out the recording of this session. If you have any questions, then we're going to pause in a moment to cover a kind of questions that you have. So please do pop them in the Zoom chat, and I will cover any questions that you have. But hopefully you found this session useful. We really appreciate you getting to check out ExpensePlus, and do contact our support team after this session, which you can do by clicking the blue help guide icon and then clicking the send us a message button in the top right hand corner if you do have any questions. Thank you for your time today.